Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you again. It's been such a long time. Hi, Andrews. Hi, Charmaine, Araxi. I see Ilya is also here. Let me just unmute
Hi,
him.
Sultan.
And Mario. Okay. So, I will not delay because there's not much time to talk today, only 2 hours. So I will just let Andrews, if you want to do a short introduction once again, because we do have new participants as well. Please also start a small introduction of everyone and maybe a short brief about what happened on the 18th of February. And I will leave you to it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hi, Zoltan, and hi, everybody. Okay, so we have a relaxed, laid-back version of a panel we had a few weeks ago. I'm not really familiar with the new participants, but I think I will see them in the line above my Zoom screen. So yeah, well, a few weeks ago we had a standard panel of 45 minutes, which was basically the only feedback, the only negative feedback that was from the panelists. It was that 45 minutes for us all is too short of a time to discuss everything. So 2 hours is, I think, pretty much enough to do a really good introduction of what's happening in Ukraine and Georgia and some other emerging markets in the same region. So I see with myself the same participants, same experts that we had a few weeks ago. I see joined right now, Vladimir, Araxi, Charmaine. I think we should have Mario Galea too. Yeah, so I'll just double check if everybody's here. I think pretty much we have pretty much everybody. I see that in most of the cases that the people are in the same room that they were a few weeks ago. So I think let's just start off with where we were a few weeks ago. So once again, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to everybody else. And let's kick off with Ukraine. I see Ilya's picture in front of myself. So I believe we started with Ilya a few weeks ago. So Ilya, if you are with us, say something. And
yes. I'm
okay.
here, Andrews. Hi, everyone. Sorry for not being able to turn on my video for the time being. In order to provide the latest insights on emerging markets, I decided to fly to Kiev for this panel. So I'm now trying to get back to my room in order to be able to turn on the video and be with you 100%. But for the time being, I'm going to be only in the form of voice and my very old picture in Zoom.
Okay, that's great. So if you're comfortable with starting off, even if there's something new that you have for us after the panel that we have, just you can introduce that right now, and we have a really good 2 hours in front of us.
Well, essentially, I think that I do not have anything critically new from since our latest meetup, but I still would like to kick off this webinar, this panel, with maybe a rather optimistic view on Ukraine, that everything is continuing to moving forward, and Ukraine is continuing its quest towards the regulated market. And yesterday I was attending a huge conference, Ukrainian Gaming Week, and I was astonished and impressed by the amount of people who were attending it, and by the level of the conference itself. And I think that maybe the right angle to take in our panel is that one of the main do's for emerging markets is try and to involve as much people and as much market professionals as possible. And Ukraine definitely succeeded in that, at least from what I have seen yesterday.
Okay, so as far as I understand, you see people and interested parties piling up in line for what's new in Ukraine. Now, as you know, for a bit of a new angle, what kind of deal breakers you see right now from people that you speak from people that are interested in entering, and which are the main deal breakers right now that you see, and from the feedback that you get?
Well, I think that there are at least two main, well, I would not call them deal breakers or showstoppers, but there are at least two points or two issues that make a lot of concern. And made a lot of concern yesterday, and I see this from my clients as well. And the first issue is a lack of clarity on taxes, but this hopefully might be resolved in the nearest future, at least from what I've heard yesterday. Because yesterday, Boris Baum, who is the independent advisor to the office of the President Zelensky, told that the taxation issue is going to be resolved in the coming weeks, if not on this week. And the second issue is the certification issue, and namely, again, it's not an issue as we already have a problem. It's mostly the situation when we do not have any clarity on this. So, and I think that mixing these two issues together, I think that the main deal breaker and the main showstopper is a lack of clarity about what is going on and what to anticipate. So, and I hope that this could be resolved as soon as possible. Okay,
but for instance, in terms of the same topic, obviously everybody interested in the market has its expectations. So, what kind of expectations are literally are not worth considering at all, for instance. So what from the feedback that you get, what is something that the people really expect and they see that it's not going to happen?
I don't think that there is anything like that, honestly, because there was a lot of information and a lot of and actually I am surprised by the level of in-depth involvement of all people interested in this market, essentially, because everyone is so educated about the law, about how does it work, and about what to anticipate from it and what they want from it. So, and it leads to inevitable knowledge of everyone involved in the process. And I don't think that there is anything that could lead to some sort of a disappointment, because at least I think that what you've just described should lead to a disappointment, basically, because if you expect something and you do not receive this and you not see the possibility of receiving this, then you're obviously disappointed. And I don't think that this is the case for Ukraine here, especially because of the rather open framework of regulations of the gambling market, and everybody could get what they want to get, essentially. So I don't think that there is anything like that, as you mentioned, Adrius.
Okay, so from the last news, you have the first one. Ukraine has the first licensee. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And what is the foreseen near future of the new entries and the movement there?
Just one second,
Well,
Ilya, sorry to interrupt you. You can continue afterwards. If anyone would like to join this conversation, they can just send me a message and I will enable your microphone and video, and you can also join this conversation to add to your point. Okay, that's it. Sorry, Ilya.
thanks, Zoltan. Well, the first license, if I remember correctly, was issued to an entity that is a part of Cosmolot Group. And actually, all first licenses that were issued, and some of them were already paid and therefore became operational. These licenses are for online casino. So we can already tell that it seems that the main vertical in Ukraine, at least for now, is online casino vertical. So I understand that they would be more that Cosmolot and other new licensees would start operating as soon as possible. And I also see in the chat that actually Boris Baum joined us and he would like to add. So Zoltan, please unmute Boris. And I think that he's the more right guy than I to tell about first licenses because, well, he witnessed everything. Zoltan?
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Oh.
Thank you for letting me in. So my name is Boris Baum. I am representing the Ukrainian gambling market, so to say. Well, the good news is that 10 minutes ago, the committee of the parliament, the Ukrainian parliament, has voted to put into the voting, for the first voting, the amended changes to the tax law, which I've been talking about recently and that the market have been expecting for a long time. The general amendments that will be done there is that the GGR is set on the level of 10% for all the activities, for all the verticals. We there is a zero winning on the tax on the winnings with a cap of approximately $2,000, and then the people have to pay. So they have voted for canceling a triple license payment, which is a huge achievement for us. So there is a simple tax one license payment, and the GGR is effective immediately. So that is good news for us, and this is a very good indication that that the market is going to move forward. Because I just want to remind that we have voted first time for these amendments in June 2020. So in like almost 9 months, 10 months to move this boat. So next week is the parliament session in Ukraine. So on this question will be voted for the first time. So we're hoping that the parliament will support this and it will give a clear indication to the players in regards to the taxation. But hopefully the parliament will support this. So this is good news.
Okay.
So
just a quick remark. So basically, when you are referring to the amendments to the tax regime, you are referring to any possible verticals, any type of gambling activities in Ukraine, or some sort of cherry picking of
no. This only refers to only to gambling. So we have the current taxation brackets for the gambling. So but they
Yes.
but they're today. So we had to change those tax brackets and the conditions. So currently today is there is no there is the 19.5% tax on the winnings. There is 18% GGR currently. GGR for the slot machines at all. So we had to introduce the new things, and we decided to put it all just level up them together so everyone has the same.
I feel like you are referring both to the sports book, to the casino.
Yes. So we have online casino, sports book, slot operations. There is no GGR for the land-based casinos. So the land-based casinos pay the fixed amount. So GGR only for lotteries, sports book, online casino, and slot and the land-based slot operations.
Okay, so that's for those who are not familiar. If you're dividing in some sort of the types of gambling in this respect. So thank you very much for this insight. And yeah, please continue.
So with regard to certification, of course, I mean, Ukraine moves very fast, but again, is the system, the governmental system in Ukraine is very complicated, and it's once you change one clause in the law, you have to change 20 more other clauses in the different laws. So certification is basically is finished. The problem with the certification is the following. So we talk about, for example, GLI certificates. So unfortunately, Ukrainian laws do not allow to accept European certificates. So the way out for this is that GLI or BMM, and we've spoken to them. So they have to come to Ukraine, open their representative office, and establish the laboratories here locally. Once it is done, so we will automatically accept, and they will verify their own certificates. But that takes time. So hopefully within 3 to 6 months, this will be all done, and we will get up-to-date certificate requirements. But meanwhile, the certification requirements do exist. They're all dated. So but they can be used. So the market is going to work with the old certificates, but hopefully by the end of the year, so we'll update them. And actually, it's not about the updating the certificate requirements. It's about establishing the laboratories in Ukraine. So which is totally new. Which is totally new, but that takes time. So hopefully. So we hope that GLI and BMM will come here and will be the first comers here, because in Ukraine we don't have that experience. So we have never done RNG certification laboratories, and so this is a new thing for us. So really, right now it depends on the international markets how they're going to get involved here. But the law requires that it's a local. It has to be domiciled. So they have to be. They have to work here.
That is very important. So it's domiciled. It's not accredited like in some other jurisdictions, but it's domiciled, and literally the certification and the testing has to be run in.
So it's a good comment. So there are two ways. So they can be accredited, but the accreditation process in Ukraine goes through voting in the parliament. So you have to accredit and get the voting and get like the country intra-country memorandum approval. So it takes the same 8 months, 8 to 12 months process, and we have to go again through the parliament. So I think it's much easier, and the market is quite big for the operator like GLI open their own laboratory here. So we don't see any problem. If they don't do it, of course, they can authorize someone, and I already know that someone is speaking to GLI or BMM to open a laboratory, but they have to be taught. They have to understand how to do it. So of course, Ukraine is not going to invent their own certificates. This is 100%. We're searching for the shortcut to confirm the certificates, the European certificates or the other certificates issued by the recognized labs. So this is the issue. But again, I want to confirm that the market is working. The process goes on. Why first online businesses got the licenses? The online business got the first license because they are by law not required to have certificate of their online system. So it's like voluntary thing, but they must have it. So that's why they were the first one they can operate, actually. So they all have the certificates, but unfortunately we cannot prove those certificates because we haven't gone through the procedure, but it's technical. But on the other hand, next week we're issuing first license for the land-based casinos. We're issuing first licenses for the land-based slot operations. So the process goes on, and I want to say that we've been working only 21 days. Since the first decision. So, and we are moving very fast. I already seen the premises with the casinos. So it's going very fast. Hopefully by the end of the March, the taxes will be covered, and this issue is cleared, and I know that the foreign operators are only looking at the taxation issues right now, because all the other questions are cleared and clean. So welcome to Ukraine. So come here.
Okay, so I'll use this opportunity to ask a bit of your insights, to shed some light from from the first row. So yeah, so it seems a bit similar to what was there in Sweden when the market opened up, but the certification was a bit delayed due to accreditation of the labs and similar. So in gambling, as in other maybe industries, but in gambling, the usual thing is that the usual question is, what kind of specific, topics, issues are dealt with the primary legislation, and what are the, let's say, topics and issues that will be covered by the secondary legislation. So the main question that I have here is that, what sort of questions must go through the parliament, and what sort of questions are enough to go through the regulator to have that sorted. So basically, when it comes through the regulator, it's usually a bit, faster or these kind of things. So from your insight, what is left for, what is attributed to the regulator's decision?
Well, in general, if we talk very generally, right, everything is covered. So we're only left with the tax law, but it is again not related to our law, to the gambling law. The changes are made to the taxation law. So everything is covered already in the gambling law, which is 2285. So the tax law is 2713. So it's changes to the taxes. So we covered basically everything. Is the law perfect? Of course not, right? But again, I've been talking to many regulators, and they say that we have achieved anyways for the beginning it is good, right? So it is workable, and we have to understand that our main goal was to we just spoke to the guy, was to de-shadow the market, right, and legalize it. That is our main purpose, and this is our first stage. The second stage in Ukraine will be the development of that market. So in the development stage of the market, I think it's going to be next year, we will try to make the changes in the law that are necessary. We know there are very many questions, very issues. There's dual meanings in some of the things, but again, it's because we were not that sophisticated in that business, and that was the first attempt. And we were quite successful in the first attempt to put all the activities together in one law. So we're still fighting with the lotteries, because lotteries are trying to get their share, and because the complicated part of it is that the lottery is not gambling in Ukraine, so they are covered by a separate law. So what the lotteries are trying to do right now, so they're trying to get in their regulations and license agreement some of the parts that they might cross with booking with the sports books and the slots. And you understand that these guys are looking at this saying, listen, I mean, you're not the gambling, so you can be anywhere you want. You don't pay that much money, so you have the same taxes, and you can use for the same price, use all the and take the bets, and use slots. And there is a big scandal, I mean, right now. So we're working, we still are, boiling in this situation, but luckily for us, the other directions are going very smoothly. So betting, I mean, in slots and casinos. So we were able to separate the lottery part from these things. But again, it's a matter of the time will heal, hopefully. So we don't see any problems right now. So the Gambling Commission is very business oriented and operator oriented. So luckily for us, there are more civil guys in the commission, and it is the major message of the commission is the transparency of the operations. So
Okay.
So the people are happy. So no, we're trying with this law to make it to change the perception of Ukraine a little bit, because we understand how gambling is associated.
Okay, understood. So are you staying with us for the whole 2 hours if I'm switching right now to other people? Or
Anders, unfortunately, yes, I have to go, but I was very happy
Okay.
to just, say a couple of words, guys, and then I met with some of you. But thank you so much again for this opportunity. So invite us. We need to, send the message that Ukraine is open. So when it becomes warmer in May, so I welcome you all to come here if the flights are open.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for
Thank you
for
so
joining.
much.
Thanks, Boris.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, so thanks a lot. We heard some interesting and important insights. So I wanted to turn to Charmaine right now because you're not right. You're not just considering entering the market. You have been working on it for a bit of time. So from what you heard right now from Boris and from what you see right now, so what's your insight? Just please share the same views that you had a few weeks ago. There are many people that are joining us for the first time, and we can be free here to talk the same things that we had in the first panel. So what's your insight into the Ukrainian market, what's going on there, and what do you see the main maybe issues or main questions that still are not covered there? And hi, really nice to see you.
Hi, good morning. And yeah, I think it's quite interesting and quite exciting that we wanted all to have such a panel again and to have more time to perhaps elaborate on what we spoke about last 2 weeks ago. No, essentially what we have heard from Boris goes in the direction of what we were talking about, what we touched upon 2 weeks ago, in the sense, like, listen, this was a market that had no legalization of gambling for quite a number of years, while other markets moved from land-based to online, did not get it right first time round. You see improvements in the law constantly, at least on European markets. And within a year, we've had a law that was drafted, that was adopted. Of course, by no means perfect, but I think a good takeaway from that is that the reason to legislate was not to prohibit or restrict, it was to open the market. So you have all products on the table, you have licensing for all products, and there is a genuine, I think, need and want to get operators, international operators on the market. And that essentially means for the state moving from offshore to onshore and the revenue that comes with it. We have been caught up, of course, in the discussions around taxation, license fees, and a little bit of what else is missing, the gaps on the technical side. And it's heartwarming to say, like, listen, they have understood that there was a need, that there is a need to revisit those elements, and they are working on that. Of course, there's a lot of input and exchanges from the industry and from other markets. Again, I think that's a very positive thing, because when you are seeking to enter a market, what you don't want is, as an operator, as an industry, to enter that market and then find that you're competing with the offshore because there's not enough of choice on the market. And I think that is taken and that they're working on that. Certification was mentioned, so I just sort of maybe a bit on that. That's an important thing, because on the one hand, as Ilya said, you want legal transparency and you want to know the market you're entering, but also when there are so many other markets globally that are opening and perhaps you're looking at, also the development efforts that would be needed, not only in terms of cost, but the resources generally that are needed. You'd like to know that enough in advance, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a showstopper. You just need to factor that into your business development case. And by mentioning certification, of course, the benefits of Ukraine is that there is a lot of tried and tested out there. And if you look at the UK and Italy, just to take two quite mature markets in the UK, they've done their certification. All other jurisdictions followed. Are they perfect? Probably not, but they exist and we can take those, I would say. And then once the market is moving more towards functioning, then you start addressing more other issues, like the regulator being properly equipped to carry out enforcement against the illegal market once you have a functioning legal market. I think I can leave it at that for now.
Okay, so that's very obviously the fees and the taxes, these kind of things, they are always like political political will to have some sort of, basis and understanding of what kind of, what the budget gets from that. But the certification thing is the other way, around, because it's not something that, is very politically, involved in that kind of a thing. So from your knowledge, and maybe Ilya, if you have some sort of insights here too, what I wanted to ask you and Boris essentially was, practically no one gets, certification things issue free from the first time. So, it's always like, the first year you see some sort of gaps that you maybe didn't think of, or, but in many cases, these kind of things are, an easy fix, a fast fix. But if it has to run through the parliament, it's always, a headache. So do you have any information, let's say, in terms of the requirements for certification? Is it something that, if Ukraine wants to fix something in the requirements for testing, must that go through the parliament, or is it, attributed for the, decision of the regulator? If there's a minor thing of I don't know, checksum monitoring thing that's not working in Ukraine right now, so and you have to fix it in the law, is it something that will be a headache for Ukraine, and 18 months that Boris was indicating, or we could have a direct, I don't know, a conversation with the regulator to have that fixed? From your insights, how is it, structured in the laws of Ukraine?
Well, actually, this supports my earlier point on lack of clarity, because, for instance, I have my own view on how this certification issue should be resolved. And this view is obviously based on the current regulations and my knowledge of how Ukrainian governmental machine, so to speak, works. In the same time, I also understand that there are different ways to resolve such issues as certification. And for instance, I understand that basically this story that Boris was telling us about certification and the possibility to resolve this issue in the future is based, it might be based on something that even I don't know, because Boris is in constant, and the Commission as a governmental body is in constant contact with other governmental bodies of Ukraine, and they are trying to figure out the way to resolve the issue in the most efficient and the most, well, basically fast way. In the same time, answering your particular question on whether or not it's going to be, the parliament needs to be involved. Again, I do not represent Ukrainian regulator, but I think that most likely in the end of the day, we would face the necessity to involve the parliament here, because yeah, because basically I can break it down into more simple terms. Essentially, the issue of certification is based on the fact that in addition to the gambling law, I'm sure that everyone on this panel are aware of that, there are other laws in the world, different laws that concerns all sides of society and basically everything. And certification and technical regulations are this type of law. And there is a different law for certification in Ukraine. And this law has special nature in terms of certification issues in the whole Ukraine. It doesn't matter whether or not this particular certification concerns, namely gambling. It's just anything, starting from lamps or scissors or anything else, and ending with slot machines and RNGs. So, and essentially, how I see the possibility to resolve this issue is that in order for gambling certification to work, so to speak, again, we all understand that it's much more complex, but in general, in order to do this, it is required to change the law on certification in such a way that would include gambling and gambling commission as well prominent subjects of certification, that they have the rights, they have the authority to work on that. So I think we could do this.
Yeah, because I see that, you know, we are, yeah, and we will, you know, be speaking about, you know, lack of clarity for a bit of time, because it's always like that with the new markets. So I think what I hear from you is that one of the big questions and topics for clarity is what kind of powers will the regulator have in terms of issuing secondary legislation? Because from what I hear right now, it's really not clear what kind of powers will the regulator itself have, and what can they deal with themselves without, you know, going through the machine, through the, you know, the whole machine. So I suppose there's no clear answer right now. I hope and I'm sure that we will have that kind of an answer this year. So yeah, thank you very much for the insights.
And I just on that, sorry, Andrew, because yes, we can get caught in, as Ilya said, sort of the political, the legal angle, but yes, in the meantime, yes, you still have to work on the details. And the Gambling Commission, the authority is there. And as far as we know, they have also set up expert groups on individual or working groups, if you like, on individual topics. And again, I take that as a positive, as a genuine willingness to want to discuss and to see what is existing out there. I see Andre, who's from BMM on the call, and who perhaps can help us and a bit more on the specifics around certification, because it's quite an interesting and relevant topic.
Hi, Andre. Very nice to see you.
Andreas, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm obviously, on behalf of BMM, very interested in this discussion on certification. Yeah. Let me just give a little bit of perspective. The normal approach is that there's certification by the independent testing authority, and those independent testing authorities are normally approved by the regulator. It's important that the regulator approves them, because the regulator is there to ensure that the testing agency, which is really an arm of the regulator, has got the appropriate experience to do that and is sufficiently independent. You don't want a testing lab which has got links with the operators or the manufacturers, suppliers, or whatever the case might be. You want to make sure that they and their staff are fully independent. So it is, first of all, there's the approval of those. And I think what would be interesting is to know what are the criteria going to be for the approval of those testing authorities. The second thing is that the certification of gaming equipment can only take place according to certain standards. Now, some of those standards are already contained in the Ukraine law, but not all of the standards are there. If you look at online, there's a whole host of standards that ought to be added to that. And normally, as Ilya said, it is custom that there's a secondary set of regulations that contains technical standards. And we've made input, and I'm sure others have made input as well, in the area of what those standards are around the world. So I think we will need some clarity on that. And I have some difficulty about the whole notion of those standards being approved or amended by Parliament. The whole reason why it's normally contained in secondary legislation.
Yeah, that's really my point. Yeah,
you don't want the politicians involved in technical standards, and those things changes as technology changes, right? So you really want the Gaming Commission to have the responsibility to work with the testing labs in amending and get best practices over a period of time. Boris mentioned that, you know, there's going to be a further phase, which is the development phase. Now, in that phase, there's a whole host of changes that can take place at the online or at land-based level, and you don't want to be upheld by Parliament, who's got no idea, with respect, no idea, of what those issues are. And the third component, which I think is quite important to say, is that testing labs, before they can start doing certification, need to be accredited in terms of a number of ISO requirements. And so there's independent authorities around the world who would come and inspect the labs to make sure that they qualify in terms of ISO 17021 or 17065 or whatever the case might be, depending on what they're going to test, certify, inspect, or whatever. You don't want test labs who don't have those accreditations to start nilly-willy testing and certifying, because you don't know whether those labs have the necessary qualifications and the ability and the environment within the labs to do a good job of that. And hence the reason why there's independent accreditation bodies, and GLI and BMM and various others are subject to ISO accreditation. And how those accreditations work in Europe is, let me give you an example. BMM is based in Spain, our head office is in Spain. So the Spanish Accreditation Authority, which is part of the European Accreditation Authority, would inspect us and they would issue accreditation. And under that accreditation, we would be able to inspect and certify gaming equipment throughout Europe and other countries in Europe. It will be interesting to see what is the Ukraine's approach to that. Are the Ukraine going to be separate? Are they going to accept the European accreditation? Are they going to be separate? Are they going to? How are they going to do that? And I think this is quite important because manufacturers and suppliers, and there's a number of suppliers here, will tell you that ideally what they want is they want to transfer their approvals that have been granted in one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction. There may be a bit of a gap between the approvals that have been granted in one jurisdiction and the Ukraine, but they would ideally want the testing authority to only test the gap. They don't want to redo the whole testing, if you know what I mean. So these are things that need to be considered going forward.
You're absolutely right, because so the European accreditation is one thing. We had this the experience in Sweden when it's sort of European accreditation, but it's again had to be basically realized that the labs had to be quasi-relicensed for Sweden. So, but Sweden did one thing with transitional period. Maybe you have some sort of insights. Will there be any transitional period in Ukraine until the labs will get or accredited, or they will open up their presence in Ukraine? Is there any thoughts, any I don't know, discussions on the transitional period, because the market is already open? So Ilya or Sherman or even Andre, do you have this kind of insights?
Let me just make one point. Boris mentioned the whole issue of establishing and being domiciled. That does not necessarily solve any of the issues that I've referred to. Obviously, what you do solve is by having the test lab domiciled. You have the business there, and you build expertise there, instead of making use of expertise that are based elsewhere and not in the Ukraine. But still, someone has got to accredit the testing labs in terms of their ability to test and so on. And those are the things that I think we are interested in.
At least it's not only this state lab can test the gambling, so that would be let's say an issue for Ukraine. But it's good that at least we have that sort of procedure that's going to be in place, even with lack of clarity for today. Vladimir, are you with us? Because you're representing a slot provider, so I think you already got in touch with lots of or a particular lab. What are your plans? What are you? How are you see? How do you see this situation right now? Vladimir, are you with us? Okay, maybe he disconnected. Okay, most probably he disconnected. So he will join us afterwards. Okay, so okay, we still have 15 minutes for the first hour, so I want to be in Ukraine for that this 15 minutes. So is there anything you would like to add, Ilya and Sharmin, in terms of the Ukraine? Yeah, and in different topics, not only certification, because certification, yes, it's the technical, which is very, very important, but there are more issues to be covered too.
Yeah, of course, there are a number of issues for sure, and I think last time we touched up on responsible gambling, and we very lightly touched upon advertising. We do not really have time to talk about those in detail, but they're just as important once you are on the market as when you are talking about your technical requirements. And what we were discussing for the benefits who are not, for the benefit of those who are not on the call perhaps, is that sometimes in newer markets, because especially in Ukraine, where you're moving from no legislation to legislation, you're so focused on the main parameters we're talking about: your fees, your taxes, getting on the market, your server location, which has been a bit of a topic in Ukraine, and sometimes responsible gambling on sort of the parameters around how you would protect your player fall a bit by the wayside or don't get as much prominence, if you like. And yet, again, if you look towards the European markets, you see that more and more this is coming at the fore of discussions, and not only when markets are revisiting legislation, but also when they're newly opening. If you look at Germany, if you look at Netherlands, there's an incredible focus, and rightly so, on responsible gambling. And I think in Ukraine, perhaps we've discussed it a bit less, not only Ukraine, but also other markets that we have on this panel. And I think we should rightly give it prominence, because you want to have protection. You don't want to see an increase in problem gambling. You don't want to see problem gamblers, and you want to help the authorities understand that as well. And why is it relevant for the industry? Because if you don't be, in my view, proactive as an operator, as a supplier, and how you think you should be providing your service, your entertainment services, then when backlash kicks in and there is political pressure, there's public and media opinion that is constantly, these very dire headlines in newspapers, then there is an urgent need to do something. And what we've seen, Italy is at the moment the example. Blanket ban on advertising. And then it's as if you've solved the issue, when you have not solved the issue. You've just made it less visible. And what I was saying last time is that there is an opportunity now to look more at how you would use AI and machine learning and that data and indicators based on that data to be able to closely monitor individual players, and you are monitoring the fluctuation in their behavior to intervene as early as possible in detecting any signs of problem gambling, and then to intervene accordingly rather in a more universal manner. And I think that's topical and it's relevant. And it's relevant also because it's responsible gambling, but you have advertising, because in a new market, you want to allow your legal operators to compete on your legal market, to compete in a competitive and a healthy environment, not competing against the illegal. But your citizens have to know that you have these licensees, which are licensed by your authority and supervised by your authority, which are the licensed ones, which are the unlicensed ones. So I think that's something that should be of interest to all of us.
Okay, understood. So in terms of what's the current situation with, let's say, how does the Ukrainian framework? How will the Ukrainian framework work and fight against the black, let's say, black market? Is there some sort of? Sorry, I heard some sounds. Is there a plan of how the Ukraine will deal with the black market, both in terms of advertising and in terms of blocking measures or similar measures to deal with this problem?
Yeah, okay, I can go. Well, at the moment you have the law, and you don't really have regulations in place yet. But the law does have certain parameters. If you're talking about responsible gambling, there are parameters in the law, and we know that the authorities are working on having regulations for responsible gambling. It's the same for advertising. There are parameters in the law, but then it also ties in. I think we mentioned it earlier, in the role of the regulator and the competence you give and the independence and the remit you give to the regulator to be able to, if we stick to enforcement, to be able to actually do something. You can talk about advertising, you can talk about ISP blocking, you can talk about payment blocking, you can talk about a lot of measures. We know that none of those will work on their own. They work as deterrents, but they work only if you generally have at the same time a functioning market and your operators on the market. But in any case, for the regulator to be able to do anything on payment blocking, on ISP blocking, you have to allow them and you have to give them the remit to do that and to have the relationship, so to speak, with the ISP providers, and to be able to go accordingly to them and say, like, listen, based on URLs, this is my blacklist of operators that don't have a license here. I want you to do something about it. But the regulator can only do so much based on the powers it is given. Yeah, perhaps more a bit closer than me the discussions that have been around the law on that, because we've heard less about that in reality.
Well, unfortunately, I think that this is, I believe, the main flaw that I see right now. Essentially, again, as I told earlier, I don't see this as a showstopper, because it's really hard to create anything, well, 100% in 100% correct way from the first time. So that's fine. But nevertheless, I understand that right now, Commission and the regulator in Ukraine is really preoccupied with other issues that we had discussed. And unfortunately, the issue of combating offshore gambling in broader terms is not their first priority right now. And I'm not choosing my words to speak it carefully. It's basically the information that I received rather, well, almost directly from the Commission, that, well, we have a lot on our plate, and we need to resolve taxes, we need to resolve certification, we need to, in parallel, we need to issue licenses, and we really yet to start analyzing the issue of offshore gambling. We have these mechanisms in the law for ISP blocking, for payments blocking, but I also do not see these mechanisms being implemented in life right now. Okay. So I really hope that it will change in the future, because, as correctly mentioned by Charmaine, and I think this is it's common sense if you understand how gambling industry works, that there is practically no point for any international operator to enter the country if offshore gambling is on its rise. Because why you should spend all these costs and then compete with people who never invested a dollar or €1 into the country.
Okay, understood. So I'm coming back to the same question. I think there was no clear answer, or maybe there's no clear answer at all. So okay, without sorting out the certification, basically, no, you can't launch operations. So that's an issue. So is there, or have you heard, Ilya, any discussions of transitional period of when the operators could operate some sort of verticals without being certified until the certification as the whole will be sorted?
Well, such transitional period was introduced in the law, and it's still there, and everyone can find it. But the issue with this transitional period is that it was entitled, and the idea was to have this transitional period until 1st January 2021. But unfortunately, because of the fact that the law was adopted later than expected, and the Commission took longer to be formed than expected, and all these, well, basically normal situations that always occur during any big and complex process, we and Ukraine started to think about how to resolve the certification issue only after the transitional period was over.
Okay.
And but the intention of the regulator, and it's unfortunately Boris left us, but I think that if he would be here, he would confirm that the intention was precisely to start the market, for instance, in May 2020, have this rest of the year as a transitional period for working without certification, and then starting from 1st January with everything in place, start working officially and start working with everything in place. But unfortunately, well, life always changes its plans, so it is what it is.
Okay, understood. So to let's say to finish up or to wrap up Ukraine for a bit of time, because I want to move to Georgia and Araxi and maybe Mario, I don't know if he's here. In terms of the types of gambling and the verticals which are there, because I know that there's no particular big issues with some sort of types of gambling left outside of the scope. So do you is everything allowed? Will everything be allowed in Ukraine in terms of pick whatever verticals you have, the virtuals, the live dealer, let's say sportsbook is limited to sports events, or is it like expanded to betting on different kinds of events? How is it structured in Ukraine?
I don't know if that was a question to me, to William, or to any others on the panel.
It's for and you, Sherman. Yeah, because I don't have anyone else. On Ukraine right now. Okay. With me, because I think Vladimir left us.
We dropped off. Okay, I can kick off and then leave it perhaps more to William. Yeah. I suppose the intention was to not restrict products in the sense. If you look at in the individual licenses, you have a license for betting, you have the license for casino, you have the license for poker. So I don't think that the intention was to prohibit or restrict any products. And then of course the discussion will be, once you are applying for individual licenses, whether any sub-verticals will come up there. But I don't think that is genuinely the intention to kick off with, which I think is a positive when you look at other markets. And I think, again, what we mentioned last time was you can see it from other European markets where they didn't outright set out to prohibit, but maybe as they were rolling out licensing, rolling out regulations, other products were brought in, not necessarily everything from day one. As an industry, you want to see everything because you just want to be on the market. But you have to understand a bit the realities and perhaps the issues that individual jurisdictions have. You mentioned the transition period, and I think Ilya rightly so said there was the intention. Again, perhaps it's lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of how politics, but also how long time you need for many things to roll out. So, in hindsight, we can all be quite clever, but there's a transitional period. In the meantime, licenses are being given out. So those operators who did get the Ukrainian license will eventually start operating, even while everything is rolled out. And I suppose one thing has not come up is that in Ukraine, they're also thinking about a license for suppliers, at least according to the law. And I was listening to a webinar yesterday on Holland, which I found quite interesting. My colleague was on it, so of course I was interested. But it was an interesting debate because you have in European markets, you have a variety of systems, a variety of laws and frameworks for online. But some markets have opted to issue licenses for suppliers, and Holland, which is an upcoming market, opted not to. And then you go again, what is the purpose of supplier license? Why do you want to require it? Is it just to say I have this license on my market? Is it for some kind of supervision? And I found quite interesting that in the Netherlands, they're putting certain obligations on the operator, but equally eventually on the supplier through outsourcing obligations. I'm not intending to discuss it now. I just thought it was quite an interesting topic because we talk about licensing and suppliers at least according to the law in Ukraine, will need a license, but we have not seen any draft regulations for that. And when you go about all the other, legal clarity and transparency, that is another thing. If down the line, the regulator had to say like, oh, you can only provide what is offered by a licensed supplier on the market, then those existing B2Cs have a problem, because if there is no supplier license, then you cannot offer that content supposedly. So I think eventually down the line we'll have a debate just on this probably. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because in terms of if it's only testing only or certification only, it's purely technical. If that's licensing, so basically, there's some sort of transparency of the entity is involved and these kind of things. Yeah, I think we will discuss that in terms of Ukraine in the near future. I think I won't add up anything here because simply there's not much clarity in this respect today. Okay, thanks a lot for the time being. I think we will get back a bit to Ukraine too.
Andres, if you don't mind, I wanted to add a little bit more on the supplier license just to wrap up Ukraine and move forward. Yeah, essentially, Charmaine is has very accurately described the current issue around supplier license as well, because as of now, Ukrainian law just provides that if you are a Ukrainian entity and you're supplying Ukrainian B2C operators, you need to have a license. In the same time, the law is silent on whether or not non-Ukrainian entities should have a license. The law is silent on any obligation of, as Charmaine mentioned, of the operator to use only licensed products. And the law is also silent on any prohibition to accept products from non-licensed operators. So essentially, I think that we will see this in the next episodes of Ukrainian series, but right now I see that this lack of clarity on supplier license is the issue that is yet to be comprehended by everyone, if you know what I mean. Because everybody is occupied with basically taxation, certification, we have discussed all that. But this supplier license issue, in the end of the day, might affect the whole legislation framework in the country because of the obvious reasons of nature of supplier business or B2B supplier business. So I think that it's very important that we raise this now, and I think that we should continue to raise it moving forward. Because, for instance, again, it's a pity that Boris left us, but if he was here, if he would be here, I would ask him this question about his view on the supplier license. And I know that generally the regulator and Boris himself, they are of the view that supplier license should be required for everybody. But they also understand that right now, again, as I mentioned, the law provides only for that Ukrainian entities should have such license. So it's a very complicated situation as I see it.
Yeah, I understand that. So I want to remind everybody who's here, who's listening, and who's participating, that you can jump in and ask the questions related to the topics. I think I need Zoltan's help here, because I think he sees who wants to who would like to join and ask questions. So I think we can move that to the later stages, because I really can't control those who want to. I can't unmute those people who want to speak. So right now I would like to move to George a bit, and I think we could remain in the same topic. Araxi, hi, nice to
Hello.
you. Yeah, so we were discussing right now the let's say software suppliers licensing. How is it right now currently in Georgia? If you have these kind of insights, is there a procedure for licensing of the software suppliers, for the game suppliers? Yeah, what kind of insights could you share here?
Well, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate Ukraine, because they are doing it perfectly well. They are moving fast, and this is very exciting. what refers to Georgia, we have some news too from the government. Now we have a new prime minister, so I believe it won't have its effects on the gambling industry. But we wait for changes, and we know that they will take place. What refers to the licenses and certification, actually, these are two different subjects. And personally, as a provider, we think about it deeply because it affects us directly, and we need to understand what we should do to enter this or that market. And as we work in different markets, we deal with different regulations, we deal with different conditions. And we need to understand that this is essential because each country tries to have this gambling activity clear. And first of all, they need to be on the side of the players because they need to think about their citizens. What refers to the licensing in Georgia, there are already activities. So some companies, they try to get permission to supply their product here in Georgia through the operators from Georgia, because they are closer to the government, they are closer to the Minister of Finance, and they always have more information than any other provider, any other supplier who is not in the country physically. And this subject right now is very interesting because we're facing changes right now, and we don't know if these changes will be good or not, because as a supplier, I can judge from my point of view, and of course I think about my good situation, the best situation for the provider. Because certification, yes, it's understandable, but sometimes license is not that understandable because we don't quite understand what they need a license for. If they want to have, like we said, the local certificators, the local certification, I accept it. Why? Because there will be monitoring, they will understand this or that game, especially in Georgia. Everything is under monitoring. So if you want to represent any game on your site, first of all, you need to have a clear understanding if this game corresponds the law of Georgia about gaming or not. You need to understand if the monitoring entities find it good from financial point of view, from the GGR point of view, from RTP point of view or not. So this is the case, basically. Yes, they will have more clearance about what they are doing, but what I don't like is that they will put limitation for people who want to enter the Georgian market. Because first of all, when you enter this market and you bring here a new product, you can't be sure if this product works well or not. But when you need to deal with licensing, with taxes, etc., 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 this is like to buy a box without knowing what's in it. Because you can do the licensing, you can make everything, and what if your game doesn't work there? What if the players don't play your game?
Okay, so for the quick introduction into Georgia, Georgia is not a new market. Basically, it has been on the list on the map for a bit of time. You are just facing some changes. But can you shed some light? And what are we facing? What's from the time perspective? Is it currently changing? Is there a plan for this year? And what extent is currently, there? Is it, due to enter into force in 2021? If so, what is due to enter into force in 2021? These kind of things, because I know that you are introducing things. You got the new, let's say, private regulator in Georgia, but so is it like a step-by-step changes, or is like a package that is going to enter into force this year or next year?
I wouldn't say that these changes are unexpected, because as any market, we're developing step by step, and there is no law in the world that is perfect. Every law has its breaches that should be covered from time to time. But right now, what we are facing, this is just, approach to the European standards. Because in many countries, we have certification. In many countries, we have licensing for suppliers, for providers, and this is normal. This is good. Before, when any offshore company could come to Georgia and have their operation, and they felt fine without paying any taxes, without doing anything, they could make their advertisement on any illegal site which are used here in Georgia widely, because why people should pay for, let's say, Netflix, if they can watch the same movie in the same quality in some not legal site, on some not legal site, and pay nothing for it. And people who work here without any license, they use these sites to make their advertisements. So any advertisement here is used. And right now, the government is trying to cover the breaches that the actual law has. And this is quite normal. This is what I find normal. But, we can accept or not accept some things. But at the end of the day, we have nothing to do but understanding that this is the condition of the country. If you want to follow, if you want to have players, if you want to have partners in this country, you need to follow the conditions. If you don't follow them, well, you can stay out of this country. At the end of the day, it's your choice as a supplier. If you come to this country, you need to be ready for these conditions. This is something normal and acceptable. Georgia is not, I can't say that we didn't expect anything and it fall on our hands unexpectedly. No, we were waiting for it. We thought that one day it would happen.
Okay, so you heard we were speaking about Ukraine, and there's a bit of unclarity there. It's usual, it's normal. So what kind of unclarity do you have right now in Georgia? What kind of things that basically the industry players who are already there, they are they don't know what's going to be in place, let's say this year. You are referring to the games, let's say. Will the particular game fall under the legislation, or will that game be outside of RTP, like RNG requirements and different kinds of stuff? So in Georgia, is it an open list or a closed list system in terms of what kind of games can you move to Georgia?
What I really love about this market, that this market is very open-minded. For example, we provide virtual games, and we know what it means not to be able to provide these games in different countries. For example, right now I can't provide my games in Russia because it's prohibited to have virtual games there. But Georgia is very open-minded from this point of view. They accept all the games, and all the games are represented in the market. And you can also see the games that are made in the market and are made especially for the market. Because Georgia, well, all the gambling comes from the culture of the country. And it's very important to take into consideration the background of the players, what they played when they were children, let's say. Now these games are represented on the sites, and slots are very popular here. TV games are very popular. Sportsbook, of course, it goes without saying that this is the most developed vertical. Any game has its acceptance here. For example, for virtual games, I can enter with virtual games to Georgia without problems, but we need to understand how to give it to the players. Because for example, there are different ways to supply this product to the betting shops. And for virtual games, betting shops are the main area for development. Here we need to understand if it's going to be a terminal solution, if it's going to be a POS solution. For example, POS solution here in Georgia won't work. And if you need to bring terminals here, you need to take into consideration that you need to pay taxation, because you bring good here to Georgia, and you need to pay 18% to the to the government. And just it's very open. The market is very open. The government is very open-minded, and this is what I like about this country, that every new thing is acceptable, but there will be a monitoring. So you need to suit to match the requirements of the market, the requirements of the government. If you don't match them, well, it will be difficult for operation. But if you do, no problem.
Okay, so thanks a lot. I'll try my luck to understand if Mario Galea is with us, because he was with us in the first panel. He was the panelist of this panel in the first time. So I'll just, Mario, if you can hear us, but I think he's not here. So I think we won't get his insights, because he's representing the regulator established in Georgia. Yeah, so it would have been really nice to hear from him. I think
basically Mario will be more accurate about the regulation, because I'm a supplier representative, and I represent product, I represent B2C, B2B, but Mario represent the governmental part, so he'll be more aware about the regulation. While Mario is not online, I can tell you, for example, what it's about the taxation here in Georgia. What do you need to get the license? If you're interested in it.
Yes, of course.
Well, what refers to the operation in Georgia, first of all, you need to be registered as a company here in Georgia, and the registration takes just a couple of hours, so it's not a big deal. You can register your company in both ways. You can be the citizen of Georgia, or you can be a foreigner. So the government gives you an opportunity to bring your business to the country. And we need to take into consideration that this country is developed by tourism. So the incomes that we have from other countries, from the businessmen who come from other countries and want to develop their business here in Georgia, are very important. The government gives an opportunity to have a business here. And what's interesting here in Georgia that the licenses are given for 5 years, and there is no need to renew the licenses every single year, which is a very good condition for the operators. But there are annual payments, there are quarterly payments, and for each segment of the operation, there is a specific payment, and for each city here, there is a specific payment too. For example, the most expensive operation is in Tbilisi, because this is the capital of the country, or the tourists come to Tbilisi. Let's say if you want to have a casino here in Tbilisi, you will need to pay 5 million lari, which is a little bit more than 1 million euros, 1,200,000 euros. But right now in Tbilisi, we have 3 casinos. So this is not a small amount for such a small country. And of course, there are other payments for slot machines, there are other payments for table games, other payments for bookmaker companies and lotteries. So all of them, they are licensed here in the country. And what refers to the quarterly payments, they also vary from city to city. For example, if you want to have, let's say, a casino in Tbilisi, it will be one price. But if you want to have a casino in Batumi, which is a resort, in Borjomi, this is a resort too, this is way cheaper, because you'll pay something like, let me calculate. It will be something like 30,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's way cheaper. And of course, there are different taxes on your business. For example, you have your corporate income tax, which is 15%, and you should pay for it. You need to pay the taxes for the salaries of your employees, which is in Georgia is very low. It's 20%. If we compare it with let's say the neighbor Armenia, it was 27%. Right now it's 23%. Last year that, yes, they changed the percentage. And of course, you need to pay a tax on the property, which is 1%. But overall, the government wants to develop the tourism, and that's why they develop this business too. It doesn't refer only to the gambling industry, but also in other industries too. We have many businessmen from different countries, mostly neighbor countries, here in the country, in Georgia, and this is, let's say, this just stimulates the economy of Georgia, because recently, due to pandemic, we had difficulties not only in the gambling sphere, because all the betting shops are closed, all the casinos right now are closed, but also in other spheres. We were closed for 3 months.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for this introduction. That's really interesting, really interesting, because I know that Georgia is an interesting market. It has been an interesting market for a bit of time, even for a bit of time. Okay, so Ilya, Sharmin, do you have anything to add in terms of Georgia, or we could close this market for a bit of time, because afterwards I would like to move with Ilya a bit about Uzbekistan, because this panel actually includes Uzbekistan. It includes Kazakhstan too, but I think we let's not touch Kazakhstan in depth. So yeah, if you have any insights into Georgia, please do so, and then we'll move forward afterwards. Ilya.
Yeah, sure. I think that after, it's hard to add anything on Georgia after Arax's speech. But in any case, I always use Georgia as an example of as an example of how a post-Soviet country could regulate gambling. And when everybody were discussing whether or not Ukraine could become a new gambling frontier in the CIS or in post-Soviet territory, I was always wondering, why are you forgetting about Georgia? Because it's quite actually it's quite weird that compared to the neighboring countries, Georgia has one of the most well-developed set of regulations that I have ever seen in this region. I mean. And I also think that it might be this nature of Georgia might be jeopardized by latest B2B changes that were mentioned as well, and all this stuff. But in the end of the day, what I like, and I also can agree with Arax's point here, that Georgian regulator and Georgian market is generally very open towards the market players, and it's very open towards the communication between them. So I think that it's a pity that neither Ukraine nor Uzbekistan, and we're getting forward to our next market, is actively using Georgia as an example. And I think that everybody would benefit if Georgian experience and Georgian approach would be installed in the new markets that are opening up in this region right now. So I guess this is my take on Georgia. I don't know if Charmaine has anything to add here. But
Yes, Charmaine, is Georgia a market of focus for playtech?
But I think when you want to be functioning within regulated markets, every market that is regulated is of interest, is of focus. It's no different to what we were discussing on Ukraine when you talk about, you know, there are a lot of markets globally opening up, and you have to make your business case, you know. Every entity, no matter how big, only has so much resources it can devote to individual markets. So it goes back to, of course, yes, the costs, but the development efforts that are needed. You know, we all go to the same few colleagues in the business at the end of the day, like, oh, I need this tomorrow for whatever, South America, North America, Europe, you know, and they go like, you know, if I can work 24 hours, I will not have that done for you by tomorrow. But what my takeaway from what we've been discussing about Georgia is similar to what we said on Ukraine, is the willingness and the openness to actually want to have a functioning market. We know that in Georgia, there is the licensing for suppliers, for vendors kicking in. And that is the takeaway from that. It will depend, and it does depend on how cumbersome or not, you know, costs and developments that they put on those license conditions, or instead of a license condition to supply legally in that market. And we know that there is a, let's call it a deadline kicking up, and whether, you know, everything can be done by that date for everyone on the market, I suppose, is a question mark we all rightly have. But no, of course, yes, you know, to go back to your question, yes, you look at a market, if it's coming up for regulation, you want to see how those conditions are. Yes.
Okay, so for those who are not really familiar, you know, you are referring to some deadlines. Could you please elaborate a bit on that? What kind of deadline and what are we, you know, facing? What kind of changes are we facing in literally this year? And you know, what can the suppliers expect of, you know, actually this year to change?
Actually, I would look towards Ilya and Araxi, who are much closer to the Georgian market. But essentially, there is the regulations envisage a 1st of March deadline for vendors on the market. So that's the deadline that one is looking at.
Okay, so Ilya, do you want to elaborate a bit on that? Because you were moving your head.
No, I'm here. I'm I'm just usually not actively moving, you know, during such panels.
Okay, great. So yeah, so because I promised to move on at least, you know, for I don't know, 15-20 minutes to Uzbekistan. Can you please, you know, introduce what's going on there? Because I have, for instance, I personally don't have any insights to Uzbekistan. So I would be really, really glad to just really, lay back and listen.
Sure, would be more than happy to do so. So if I would be, I'll try to make this short and sweet in order to spare a lot of time of discussing various ideas of Uzbekistan president and Uzbekistan government. But in a nutshell, in the late in the late 2019, Uzbekistan president issued a decree stating that in order to develop and give a push to local sports, and in particular football in Uzbekistan, it is required to legalize sports betting in the country. And I put an emphasis here on the word sports, because it's not just betting, it's sports betting, so betting only on sports events. After that, a lot of time passed, and I can I can tell you a lot about all this story. And but we managed, as 4H, we managed to somehow assist Uzbekistan government in their quest to legalize sports betting. And as of today, I understand that they had, well, we need to make a step back. They essentially, this president's decree established a deadline for the legalization of sports betting industry, and this deadline was set at 1st January 2021.
Similar to Ukraine.
Yes. You see, it's a thing around this territory. We like to set deadlines and then miss them.
I like that too. Actually, I like that too personally.
But contrary to the Ukraine, Uzbekistan decided not to launch the market in the state of being not fully regulated. And I understand, and this might be considered as an insight, and as there is no public information on that. So don't quote me here, because I don't know, maybe I will be punished for telling this to everyone. But essentially, it is, I understand that it is agreed with the government that the date of, well, market opening, so to speak, is moved to summer 2021. So essentially, I hope that in the coming months, 3 or 4 months, we will see some drafts that Uzbekistan government will basically draw up and try to regulate sports betting industry. I also think that in terms of interesting points about Uzbekistan is that Uzbekistan, and I see this in a lot of my clients and a lot of my interactions within the industry, that Uzbekistan is usually somewhat overlooked, so to speak, by by international businesses, because, well, Uzbekistan, where is it? What is this country? But on the same time, Uzbekistan has rather huge population, rather big one. It's less than Ukraine, but nevertheless, it's still big. There is a rather good level of mobile and internet penetration in the country. In the same time, on the downside, Visa and MasterCards are not so widespread there. But again, this is a matter of time after sports betting will be legalized. And generally, I think that if Uzbekistan would be able to create and draw up and set a sensible framework for sports betting regulation, and what I mean by sensible here is that they are not going to use, neighboring countries' examples. For instance, I heard a rumor that they were just trying to take Russian legislation on sports betting and implement this in Uzbekistan. And I used all my efforts to explain to them that please don't do this. Russian legislation is not a good example of sports betting regulations. Yeah, please don't do this. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but I really hope that as soon as we would see any draft documents, then we would not see interactive bets and other specific definitions of Russian gambling regulations. But I also, and to end this my speech on more optimistic note, I also understand from my interactions in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent, that the general mood around the country is to look towards the West. And this general mood also transpires on the process of legalization. Because, well, as you can imagine, I'm not the guy who can come to the government to tell them something about, well, local stuff and what is happening in their own country. I'm the guy who can tell them about what is going on in Europe, how this particular matter is regulated around the world, and how it's better, how to implement basically European approaches into the local soil. And this is what I do. And I think that the reason and the fact that I was answering certain questions from Uzbekistan side, this only fact already shows that Uzbekistan government is trying to use their own way compared to Ukrainian one, when they just decided to take various bits and pieces from various laws. And they are trying to find a compromise between their local specifics and cultural differences, and compromise between the local specific and cultural differences and best international practices of gambling regulation. And it's a complicated task, obviously. We all understand that, and I think Charmaine can add on that as a lot of additional information. But any complicated task speaks about the ambition of people who are taking this complicated task. And I personally really like the ambitious people, and therefore I will really try and push everyone to look on Uzbekistan, because any ambition should be rewarded by attention, by involvement, and by participation in this market. And I really hope that if everything goes the right way, then we will see great market with great regulations, and it might become another, it might compete with Georgia in terms of the quality of regulations and in terms of the approach there. But Georgia, unfortunately, Georgia will lose compared to population, obviously. But nevertheless, yeah, it might be an interesting competition in the region.
Okay, so to wrap a bit, so we're talking about a sports book. Currently, we're talking about only sports book.
Yeah.
In Uzbekistan. Okay, and this is so. And from your perspective, who is going to be affected? Is is that preliminary thoughts are that it's going to be local businesses are going to be affected, or it's addressed towards the international players too? Is a task of the government to sort gambling question out in any kind of way, or to fix budget holes, or to get an investment from outside of the country? What is the general feeling of what kind of tasks do the government itself have there?
I think that the fact that President decided to put the legalization of sports betting in the context of supporting sports speaks for itself. And I also understand that it's not, Uzbekistan never had the problem that Ukraine had with illegal gambling all over the streets of Ukraine. Because, well, Uzbekistan, it's not a secret, Uzbekistan is a Muslim country, and therefore it's rather hard to establish illegal slot machines parlors in Tashkent. But in the same time, I also see another sign that this is true, what I'm saying, is that governmental body that was tasked with the task to prepare a draft legislation for sports betting is a capital markets development agency. And this capital markets development agency, unfortunately, me and Charmaine had a separate discussion that it might be a good idea to touch a knowledge gap between the regulators and the market that exists in this region, but we never had the chance. But anyway, this capital markets development agency is headed by a guy who came back to Tashkent from the States, and he was working in Merrill Lynch, he was working in Goldman Sachs, and generally he's very westernized guy. And I am certain that head of this agency, he understands that it is a huge possibility to attract international investments. And by international investments, I mean not like any foreign non-Uzbekistan money, I mean prominent international investors, public companies, listed companies who will enter the country, who will create working places, who will invest in the economy, who will push forward IT industry of Uzbekistan. And I also see, and I really hope that this will not change in the future, but I see that they are looking forward to that. It's not the matter of local operations or creating a local monopoly to just ensure that a proper amount of money goes in the right pocket. It's a story about creating a sensible and workable industry with involvement of international investors and international companies. So, and this is my view from my perspective. I really hope that I am right and this will not change, because if it would be changed, then obviously I would look like a little bit bad, you know, after targeting everyone towards Uzbekistan.
Understood. So I hear that it's a pure, white sheet of paper to start basically the history of gambling there. Great, Charmaine. You were referred to by Ilya in terms of Uzbekistan too. What kind of insights do you have there?
We did. We had a bit of a discussion about markets opening up in that region and also, of course, globally. Just one point about Uzbekistan, because Ilya said maybe you don't know enough about it. It was actually on my travel list last year when all plans went haywire. That was my holiday, and it's still on my list. Because I've heard about Uzbekistan for so many years from a cultural point of view. I think a main point here is, there will be political reasons why there was a decision, at least initially, to not legislate for all products. And it goes back to our discussion last time when you say, when you're trying to engage, and especially when you do have the possibility and opportunity to engage on the ground with those that be, that you have to appreciate the market, the culture, and the starting points and what have you. And you don't go in and say, these are the products European markets offer, this is what you should offer, and this is how you should offer them. That does not necessarily go down well. My understanding so far is that perhaps because, it's betting, it's sports betting, maybe not only political reasons, but they just wanted to start with this, and that is what is on the paper. But it does mean that you have the opportunity to start a discussion. The way that then you try to bring in, listen, you're talking about the online environment. The offshore is happening, it's inevitable, it is happening. There will be reasons why you want to legislate. Yes, revenue for the state. You want to prevent crime, supposedly. You want to protect your players. You want to bring your players from offshore, onshore. So you'll have those objectives. And to satisfy those objectives, the reality is that if you really want to attract a sufficient number of operators, just having sports betting might not be attractive for a large number of the industry. So you might attract a smaller number. So you have a lesser developed, so to speak, market. And that means that you will still have a chunk of your players going offshore. There is that reality. But my point would be is that you have to engage on the ground in a sensible manner when you want to engage with the authorities. I think it's a very valid point that Ilya made as to who is actually tasked with looking at sports betting. It means it's an open view, like we've said for Ukraine, like we've said for Georgia. The intention, as far as we know, is not to introduce something which is restrictive or which is favoring some incumbent, not the international market. And that's a plus sign. One, perhaps another point is that Ilya brought up is what might be missing in comparison to European markets is that European regulators had the opportunity to engage between them, to cooperate between them, both in a formalized way within the expert group that the European Commission had set up. And I had the benefit to sit in those meetings. And it did allow for a lot of discussion between at the time 28 regulatory authorities plus Norway and others. And also, of course, in the margins of that, you had all the regulators meeting in Europe, but on the margins of that, a handful of those will have met, on the eve before over dinner. But it gave an opportunity for, Italy, who's quite a mature market, or Latvia, Estonia, even who are newly regulating for online at the time, to engage in a discussion. And you also have other fora like GREF, who I believe still meets in maybe less formalized manner. But again, it's all regulators sitting down, newly opening markets, new products coming on the market, new challenges, perhaps behavior of licensees on the market. And that might be a little bit missing in the region we're talking about at the moment. For whatever reason, maybe it will crop up, but it would give the benefit of having an exchange, like, where Georgia is right now, where Ukraine is right now, where Uzbekistan is right now, indeed where Kazakhstan might be. It would be an opportunity. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you very much. I would now want to wrap up our panel. And by that, I mean, let's get back a bit to Ukraine and let's do an exercise. We have 2021 and it's already 2 months past of this year. Let's imagine, how will this year look like for the remaining 10 months in Ukraine? What's your views? Not like, what do you expect, but how do you think it's going to be here? Because the last news, and I see the chat here on my right. So, Cosmolot, Parimatch, Slot City, and supposedly First Casino, already 4 online casino licenses in Ukraine. So that's, that's in opposition to 1 licensee even a few weeks ago. So it's really, the market is really open, but lots of unclarity. So let's imagine right now, starting with you, Sherman, what's going to happen within the next 10 months for everybody?
My crystal ball. I think we will see more licenses. So far, what we've seen is online casino licenses. Let's not forget that they're legislating and they're regulating also for the land-based. So I think we will definitely see more licenses unfolding in other products as well. And okay, no crystal ball, based on what Boris was saying this morning, is that they're discussing taxation, they're trying to improve. So I think we will definitely see improvements and the market will start functioning.
Okay, thank you very much. Ilya?
Wow. I really usually don't like making any prognosis or something like that, because
well, you don't need to promise anything.
Yeah, I understand, but it's generally, life is usually much more complicated than our takeaways from previous events. But in any case, I think that let's structure it this way. I would not be surprised if in the end of the year we would be either back to square one in terms of Ukrainian legalization, and for instance, everything will be just turned back, and the commission would be disbanded, and new people would come in and try to work on the legislation. Because, well, generally Ukraine is a very turbulent market and turbulent country. I'm not saying this in a negative way, but I'm saying this as a matter of fact. It's the way it is.
Yes.
And I also would not be surprised if by the end of the year we would see a functioning market with a certification in place. And I think that this...
you do see or you don't see?
I can see both options. I can see both variables here happening. Yeah. But internally, I tend to be more optimistic, and I really hope that the first option would not happen, and we would see a functioning market in the future.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Now I really want to move forward to Zoltan and see if anybody has any question, because literally we have 10 minutes, and I think that's the best time spot for the questions from the audience.
Do you need more time for this panel?
We can schedule another one. We can make it a rolling basis. Just
Exactly, a series.
and discuss.
We can,
Yeah, I think once in a month.
once in a month.
Why
Okay,
not?
so if there are any questions from the audience, you can just unmute your microphone and ask them directly, just like if we would be in a live conference. And since there are, okay, so I guess there are no questions. Given
Okay,
the,
so if there are
given
no-
the fact, yeah, given the fact that there was 1.5 hours, even longer discussions, I think you guys covered much of the information which would have been in the questions. So yeah.
Because I saw, you know, a participant in the chat who was writing 10% was mentioned, and I thought, what does that mean? You know, did we cover only 10% of what's going on in Ukraine? But then I saw that it was about tax. So okay, so no problem with that. Okay.
Okay, so I think we can wrap up this mini meetup, which was the first mini meetup we hosted. The next one will be on March 25th, which is somehow connected to this one. It's about regulators' decisions and politics, which are mostly influenced and interconnected. So thank you everyone for attending. For all those who are watching on YouTube, thank you for hanging out with us. And I wish you guys all the best. Stay healthy, stay safe, and let's see you all on the 25th of March. And of course at the Q2 meetup, which will happen on June 10th. Okay, so logging off. See you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, all. Thanks.
Thank you very much.